Israel's military says it has uncovered a network of what it calls terror tunnels connecting the north and south of the Gaza Strip.
The Kremlin says a direct conflict between NATO and Russia would be an inevitability if the military alliance deployed troops to Ukraine. Following French President Emmanuel Macron's statement that sending NATO troops to Ukraine should not be ruled out, the Kremlin has said such a move would inevitably lead to a conflict with Russia. Macron was speaking at a meeting of Western leaders in Paris. The response of Vladimir Putin's press secretary was unambiguous. Macron's allies also poured cold water on the idea. German Chancellor Olaf Scholz said that NATO soldiers would be redeployed from active service to Ukraine, a view echoed by the alliance's Secretary-General Jens Stoltenberg. Despite apparent divisions on this issue, the military bloc has been united in welcoming Sweden into its ranks after the Hungarian parliament finally gave its approval. It gives the West a strategic dominance in the Baltic region.
The Polish government has extended the right to stay and assistance for more than 1 million Ukrainian war refugees, but only until the 30th of June. There's growing concern that the budgets of international aid organisations might be reduced, but their support is still very much needed.
Допомагаємо людям розраховувати піти, робити декларації. У нас дуже багато пенсіонерів звертаються до нас з допомогою. Навіть такі речі мінімальні, але вони потребують дуже. Я думаю, що важлива і повинна ще бути ця допомога. Тому що війна не скінчилась, вона навіть не всередині.
Given the uncertainty of the situation, international organisations have decided to join forces and launch an appeal for continued assistance.
Because there are a number of refugees who are still quite vulnerable, the UN Refugee Agency and about 100 other partners launched an appeal for complementary support to assist the government with the work that it's doing, to assist host communities of Poles. It's over 1 million refugees who remain now in Poland. This creates a certain stress on social services.
The Polish government is working on amending the law governing the stay of Ukrainian refugees, which will see them allowed to remain in the country, but probably under different conditions.
Jest taki dobry moment na to, żeby przyjrzeć się temu, jakie są realne i niezbędne potrzeby dla uchodźców i uchodźczyń z Ukrainy akurat w tym konkretnym momencie. I dlatego też po czerwcu będzie na pewno kolejny, można powiedzieć, taki przegląd tego, co jest obecnie, jakie są potrzeby. Być może są jakieś potrzeby, które już nie są aktualne, być może są jakieś nowe potrzeby. No i stosownie do tego rząd będzie podejmował niezbędne decyzje.
Meanwhile, all Polish political forces seem to be focusing on appeals for military aid for Ukraine, which, as they emphasize, is a key issue these days and weeks. Magdalena Hadownik for Euronews from Warsaw.
Israel's military says it has uncovered another underground network of what it calls terror tunnels connecting the north and south of the Gaza Strip. One of the main objectives of the Israeli offensive has been to destroy the networks, which the IDF says are used by Hamas to move fighters, weapons and supplies throughout the territory. With Israel maintaining its position on an imminent invasion of Rafah in pursuit of Hamas fighters, the Palestine Red Crescent Society has in the meantime successfully evacuated 24 people from the overwhelmed Al Amal hospital in nearby Khan Yunis. Israel's military has finally presented the war cabinet with a plan for evacuating the population from areas of fighting, despite international calls for it to cancel the operation. On the political front, Palestinian Prime Minister Mohammed Shtayyeh has resigned along with his government, which runs parts of the occupied West Bank. President Mahmoud Abbas has accepted his decision. Shtayyeh's resignation signals a willingness by the Western-backed Palestinian leadership to accept reforms as it wants to take over the running of Gaza from its rival Hamas once the war is over. NATO and Sweden have welcomed the long-awaited vote in the Hungarian parliament to ratify Stockholm's bid to join the military alliance. It came as a culmination of months of wrangling by Hungary's allies to convince its nationalist government to lift its block on Sweden's membership. Speaking after the vote in Budapest on Monday, the Swedish Prime Minister Ulf Kristersson hailed a historic day.
Sverige lämnar nu 200 år av neutralitet och alliansfrihet bakom oss. Det är ett stort steg. Det ska vi ta på allvar.
Jens Stoltenberg, the outgoing NATO Secretary General, said the move, which will see Sweden become the 32nd NATO ally, would make us all stronger and safer.
Sweden brings in very capable forces, first-class defense industry. And Sweden spends 2% of GDP on defense. It also demonstrates that NATO's door is open, that President Putin did not succeed in his attempt to close NATO's door.
People in Stockholm had mixed feelings about Sweden's NATO membership.
I guess finally it's about time. It's the right path for us. I think in this new era, it's better to be part of an alliance than being independent and neutral.
I'm unsure if I want us to be joined in NATO also, and what effect it will have on Sweden and so on, because we have always been a neutral countries.
The final elements of protocol on Sweden's NATO membership should be completed in the next few weeks. A veteran human rights campaigner has been sentenced to 2.5 years in prison by a Russian court for discrediting the country's armed forces. Oleg Orlov, who's 70, was a leader of the group Memorial, which jointly won the Nobel Peace Prize in 2022, a year after it was banned and dissolved in Russia. Orlov was convicted of denigrating the military in an article in the French magazine Mediapart. The story also criticised the war in Ukraine.
More environmental crimes will be punished across the EU. The European Parliament approved Tuesday a revised directive on the protection of the environment through criminal law that updates the list to include illegal timber trade, depletion of water resources, and substantial damage to an ecosystem. Breaches of EU chemicals legislation will also be criminalized, explains Rapporteur Manders, punishing companies for dumping polluting substances.
I think we have to stop these behaviors just to make extra money. They pollute or make people sick, and I think that's a crime, I think. So it's good that we introduce this now as a minimum harmonized criminal law in Europe. And even it's possible to take CEOs responsible if the company is misbehaving.
The directive aims to establish uniform sanctions for environmental crimes across the EU, with companies to be fined up to 5% of their annual worldwide turnover and imposing up to 10 years of imprisonment for individuals.
10 years is when a behavior is killing people, so it's an environmental crime with death, which causes death, and that's actually murder. And then they get 10 years, and that's if they do it. Let's say, intentionally, just to make money.
The law was approved with the support of almost all the political groups of the chamber. It must enter into force in all member states within 2 years from its formal adoption.
Ministers highlighted plastic pollution at the 13th Conference of Ministers of Member Countries of the World Trade Organization on Monday. The issue was particularly important for small island states such as Barbados, whose livelihoods depend on the ocean.
Ocean pollution by plastics often leads to contamination and suffocation of the very delicate coral reef ecosystem. Beyond that, there is the danger which is consequently caused upon the death or destruction of the coral reefs and that ecosystem, the destruction of low-lying coastal communities, and the reduction of the ability of persons who live in those areas to have a sustainable livelihood.
Other issues discussed in Abu Dhabi were overfishing and agricultural issues. Ministers continue to meet until the 29th of February. The small town of Bourges in northern France is underwater again for the 5th time in 4 months. The Pas-de-Calais region has once again been hit by flooding as several rivers broke their banks. For locals, it's a never-ending nightmare of flood following flood, fueled by endless rain. For some residents, it's not worth cleaning out the mud from their homes as they watch the river levels rise outside of their front doors. Summer can't come soon enough, but it's no guarantee the waterlogged ground will be dry by then.
Young people in Romania are the poorest in Europe. That's according to the most recent Eurostat economic data. It shows Romania has the highest rate of severe material and social deprivation among people between the ages of 15 and 29, more than 3 times higher than the EU average. The results, experts say, of a lack of social policies and paid jobs in relation to the cost of living. Bulgaria is second, with Greece at third. In 2022, over 17 million young people in the EU were at risk of poverty and social exclusion.
A German far-right extremist already serving a life sentence has been convicted of hostage-taking in the course of a jailbreak attempt. Stephen Balliet was sentenced to 7 years in prison. During the trial, the defendant acknowledged that in December 2022, he took prison officers in the eastern town of Berg hostage using a homemade weapon in an attempt to escape. Balliet was sentenced to life in prison in 2020 for his attack on a synagogue in Halle in central Germany the previous year, in which he killed 2 people.
Flight engineers are expecting to lose contact today with the private US lunar lander Odysseus, cutting short its mission by 5 days. It made history last Thursday by becoming the first US spacecraft to land on the moon in more than 50 years, and was due to conduct a suite of experiments. But the company behind the spacecraft, Intuitive Machines, says it came in too fast and one of its 6 feet caught on the lunar surface, causing it to fall over. It remains to be seen how much scientific data might be lost due to the shorter lifespan.
Ambition is sky high at the Mobile World Congress in Barcelona. One of the eye-catching exhibits at the technology event is a scale model of a flying car. The California-based company Aleph Aeronautics is developing the vehicle that they eventually want to have ready for commercial use. They say they have already built 2 working prototypes and aim to start production by the end of 2025. Aleph is one of several companies developing air car prototypes around the world.